engagement is such a critical metric. And I'm happy that
Yes. Say it louder for those in the back.
folks in the back, right? Yes.
Welcome to Radical Content. It's so good to be back. We got so much to dive into. If you haven't tuned in before, this show is all about how brands are doing things differently, entertaining, connecting, and building raving fans. And today's guest has been doing a lot of that over the years. She's led social media teams at Hewlett-Packard, Wyndham, now Travel and Leisure, T-Mobile, content and brand social for big B2B companies like Intuit and now Zendesk. She's been a longtime colleague and just a friend. So pumped to have her. Kari Homan. Welcome to Radical Content. Excited to have you here today.
Eric, thanks so much. What a great way to kick off the week. Thank you for having me.
I agree. And so kicking off the week, how is your new year? Everything going good as you jump into your 2024?
Oh, yeah. Probably like all B2B marketers, we are diving in. It's a little bit of Q5, right? Where we're kind of finalizing everything that's happened.
I've not heard that phrase before. I'm going to steal it.
It's a good one. I think it's really true. I don't know if there's many companies I've been at that don't have kind of a Q5.
Yeah.
We're in great shape and getting excited for a pretty exciting year ahead at Zendesk.
Awesome. So there's a lot we're going to go through. Today is going to be a lot about B2B, but we're going to bounce around a little bit because you've done some things that aren't just B2B. And before we get kind of into that, I want to start a little bit about Kari. As you look back at your career, there's two things that I think really intersect. And it's this idea of digital and content. And yeah, social plays a big component and brand plays a big component. But tell me a little bit, why has digital and content been such kind of an inflection point of where you've been able to kind of have your passion and purpose come out in your career?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I'll take you back, but I won't take you all the way through all the details, but kind of how I got started. So out of college, I stepped into traditional media. I was leading a national sales advertising team in print. And through that, we actually were asked to become the content provider for Digital City LA. This was decades ago, but it was our first introduction to digital. And so I've had kind of the joy, the benefit of kind of writing and driving kind of this wave of content through digital. And I think, what I always say about kind of who I am and my short kind of mission statement, if you will, is connecting content to customers through technology at scale. So digital has really enabled us to do that. So I've kind of seen the rise of the internet, social media, and the intersection of how all of these technologies really help you to build a powerful brand.
Was there any like aha moment along the way where you were like, because what's funny about this whole industry that we're in is a lot, you get people that are into publishing, kind of digital marketing. Sometimes I was a former radio person back in the day. Was there a moment in time where you were like, this is it? And any story kind of that you could share about how that kind of light bulb moment went off?
What's top of mind for me is when we actually dove into that project for Digital City LA, we had been consuming content through traditional means, right? Through television, radio, print, advertising, newspapers, and to see the power of having that come to life in digital formats, to me, that was my aha moment. And I said, this is where I want to spend my time. This is definitely kind of the future of how people are going to consume content. And from there, I just kind of leaned in, went back to school, got my MBA, and started leaning into the bigger brands and jumped into HP. And that really kind of set my career off.
That's good. That's good. I'm glad somebody went back to get their MBA. I applied twice and bailed twice. So it's good to know that somebody actually went through with it. But all right, before we get into some of the B2B side of things, there's one stop along the way that fits right in line with what this podcast, Radical Content, is, and it's T-Mobile. What a bold brand. What a fun brand. We talk about brand personality and boldness as differentiators. Why do you think T-Mobile has always been able to be that sort of brand? And what did you notice when you were on the inside that was different about T-Mobile?
Yeah. I mean, one of the most exciting jobs I've ever had, one of the most exciting brands, as you say, and companies, I think, kind of on the planet. And I actually left. So we met, when I was at Wyndham, now Travel and Leisure, and it was the opportunity at T-Mobile that moved me from Florida to Seattle. And so We did quite a bit of moving with my
Florida
family.
still misses you. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you. But it was an opportunity that I just couldn't pass up. And so back to your question, T-Mobile is an incredible brand, and I think they're so incredible for a number of reasons. But ultimately, what they do is they listen to their customers. These elements of what they call uncarrier moves are really originated from customer feedback. So they're doing social listening all day long, identifying what are the needs that the customers have, turning those into bold product capabilities with really incredible, powerful campaigns behind them. So it was one of just the most incredible experiences I've had. And I will always be a raving T-Mobile fan.
Yeah. Was there something or some moment? Actually, you told a story one time we talked, so I don't know if you want to talk about that again. But there was a story about a Kardashian moment, right? Did you do some content with the Kardashians? So tell us a little bit about what that was all about.
We did. So I had an opportunity to lead the social campaign for the Super Bowl. And there was a commercial and there was a really rich social media campaign. We had, the entire command center and the war room and, all of those really powerful elements that you have when you're launching a Super Bowl campaign. And it was amazing. So just for context, like I hadn't been a big Kardashian fan before that, but I respected them. I respected kind of
You
what
respected
they
their
had
hustle.
created in the world and the
You weren't
hustle that they had.
subscribed and downloading, but you respected their hustle.
I respected their hustle.
Yeah,
Working
yeah.
with them, I respected them even more. I mean, it was incredible. And it was the perfect cultural moment. I think that's the other piece of this, right?
Mhm.
That is something that T-Mobile and I think great brands do really well. Kim Kardashian was definitely, kind of top of mind everywhere. And so as we thought about data storage, which was the big kind of move that we were promoting at the Super Bowl, what better person than Kim Kardashian to really look at why the importance of data storage was needed for all of her photos. And so it was kind of a spoof on herself and not taking herself too seriously. And I think T-Mobile they did a fabulous job of kind of leaning into those moments, both culturally and what really resonates, with audiences. So it was a fantastic experience top to bottom and generated, really great results.
There's something you said in there that I think I want to kind of highlight a little bit. We talked a little bit about the importance of the T-Mobile brand being bold. They went and partnered with someone like a Kardashian, and there was this idea of not taking yourself too seriously. I think there's a lot of brands that still struggle with that. And so when you are a brand like T-Mobile and you can live kind of your personality out like that, it is such a big, huge differentiator. And so that's one little nugget that I want us to all kind of remember and hold on to. It's not just the cultural moments, but it's the opportunity for you to not take yourself too seriously. I think is so rich.
And when I was at T-Mobile, I was leading social, and that was the perfect platform for that, right? Like the opportunity to be able to tap into that personality and be able to just evolve it, not taking ourselves too seriously, and then really leaning into what is it that our audience needs and what is it that our audience is really talking about. And it was powerful. It definitely was a key lesson that I've kind of taken with me since that time.
So you have built social teams, content teams, and now you've got a larger scope when it comes to kind of brand and digital and content. What do you think the role of digital and content and storytelling plays in brand building in today's kind of modern marketing?
I think traditionally we thought of brand as a television commercial. And yes, Super Bowl is amazing. But really, if we think about the essence of a brand, it's really all of those touch points that a customer has with with your company. And that may start from searching for content and being, drawn into your blog, extending that through other experiences. Social media obviously plays such a rich role in terms of brand building. And then there's elements to kind of elevate that through broader brand campaigns, and that might be other channels. But I do think the essence of brand now is an integrated experience that really encompasses all channels.
Totally agree. I think it's a little ideal for some places, right? I think there are some places that still treat the social and the content world as as almost like the optional side of things, or that nice to have thing, or that thing that you do to talk to your fans. Why do some brands, and maybe some of the progressive brands that you're dealing with haven't had some of those issues, but why do some brands struggle with that still in your mind? And where do marketers get it wrong when it comes to digital content and storytelling? I've been in presentations with executives where you're preaching storytelling, and you're talking about engagement, and you're talking about, kind of, the integration of owned and earned. And sometimes you have that marketer that's like, yes, that's the future. That's where we need to be. And then sometimes you're like, sure, do this, but I've just got to spend time on the commercial. They don't say that with their words. They say it with their actions. Why do you think that still is going on in today?
It's interesting, because as you said, I think what I'm seeing is I am seeing this evolution that's happened, and I have, I think had the pleasure and opportunity to work with some pretty amazing brands. So I think they have the foresight and they realize the power of integrating those elements.
Everybody envies that, Kari.
I have to say, I feel really blessed. I feel very lucky if as I just look back on the companies I've had the opportunity to work with. It's incredible. But I do think that there's still some siloed mindset, right? That says no, brand needs to be at this higher level. But I think that the brands that get it right, the companies that get it right, they recognize the power of that integration. And I do also believe that there's kind of the other side of this, where you have folks that are focused on digital at the expense of brand, right? Because they're using digital and content largely for performance marketing purposes, right? So they're leaning into the opportunities for MQLs and really more of that, those performance oriented metrics versus having the benefit of really having kind of top of funnel, this broad, bold awareness, engagement, and the power of engagement. For me, engagement is such a critical metric, and I'm happy that
Yes. Say it louder for those in the back.
folks in the back, right? Yes, absolutely. I mean, really, I'm blessed that several of the companies I've worked with, they recognize that top of funnel is top of funnel. It's really designed to build raving fans, to drive awareness, to drive deep engagement. And if you do that well, it pulls people deeper into the funnel, and it drives towards those kind of ultimate business outcomes of conversion.
Yeah. I've had a lot of conversations where I tell, CEOs or CMOs or just even CEOs of small companies that, awareness plays a role, conversion plays a role. But what you can't do is yell at them and then sell to them, because there's this whole mid funnel that if you're not starting to build the relationship and engaging them, you don't get to the conversion. It just doesn't work. And I think a lot of places are still trying to take that shortcut, especially with the growth of performance marketing. But the interesting thing I'd say about where you sit, and I wonder if this is part of the reason why, maybe you're starting to see it fully integrated, A, because you kind of own kind of a larger remit to kind of make that happen.
Yeah.
But B, you're not really working in a legacy brand today, right? Zendesk is not, a 40-year, 50-year legacy brand that's fighting a lot of history and traditional ways of doing things. Intuit, a modern technology company, similar as well. T-Mobile, kind of on the front lines of how things should be going. And so a lot of people are dealing with some older models or some legacy kind of ideas, and they're up against that. The thing about that, though, is it influences B2B, I feel like, and I want to hear your point of view, it influences B2B, I think, to take a more modern approach when it comes to integrated social, integrated content. So my question after all of that is, why does B2B in your mind, maybe I just answered the question a little bit, but why does B2B in your mind adopt these new mechanisms for marketing, whether it be digital content, storytelling, or the entire kind of integrated experience? It just feels like that those mechanisms of today for B2B companies like Intuit and Zendesk feel like, and even you should go down the list. I mean, HubSpot, right? Like there's so many of these people that just like buy into owned media, buy into audience building, buy into engagement. Why is B2B crushing that? And B2C in some areas is very kind of slow to get there.
It's interesting. So I might be slightly biased, right? Because I feel like I've kind of grown up with a lot of the leaders in those roles right now. You mentioned a few companies where I have good friends and colleagues. And I think that what many of us saw was kind of this siloed approach. And we recognize that there's such an opportunity to think about this at a much more integrated level. So hopefully we're seeing some of that influence. Now, you mentioned some of the bigger companies, right? At Zendesk, we're 15 years young and still feel like,
I love the way you even call it young. Like, that's good.
yes, like it really is, as you said, like it's really it's a young company, a young culture, very kind of at the top of what's happening in the world today. And so again, I feel blessed. But I do think some companies are so rooted in more kind of traditional methods. And so I would encourage them, right? Take a look at, is it working for you? Are you seeing that conversion that's, coming from your top of funnel? If you are driving directly into MQLs and form filling, and I know where we're heading with this, Eric, you're probably losing an opportunity to really engage a customer and or a prospect. There's so much in that middle funnel that's so rich and that isn't necessarily ready for a salesperson.
Yeah. All right, so we do have to talk a little bit about Zendesk, and we'll get back to that topic you kind of just hinted at a second ago. But Zendesk is doing some awesome stuff, right? I mean, the reason why you're on here is your broad knowledge of B2B. Well, we're friends, but broad knowledge of B2B, but also all of the different things that you've done. But Zendesk has a really active and awesome YouTube channel. They've got an awesome blog. They're creating some tons of fun kind of short content. So I don't know. Tell me a little bit about maybe some of the fun stuff that you see that Zendesk is doing right now that you guys are super excited about.
Yeah, thank you. You've highlighted a lot of stuff that we've kind of recently implemented in the past few years. And so I'm glad to see that it's resonating, it's working.
It's finding me.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we definitely are kind of hyper focused and prioritizing the channels also that we're working on right now and making sure that we are, instead of, kind of spreading ourselves too thin, leaning into those channels and those content types, and expanding those content types has been a big focus for us. We also launched a podcast last year called Conversations with Zendesk. And it really is to kind of get that CX expertise voice out in the market. So the podcast has been one thing that's been really exciting and interesting for us, moving into short form content. YouTube is a big focus area for us. LinkedIn is where our audience lives, and we're really, working hard to kind of nurture that. And then there's been some, kind of fun activations that we've had, and there was one specifically in the past year that we did, and it was really leaning into kind of the competitive set a little bit, and we wanted to do it in kind of a fun and engaging and creative way, and that was through a drone show. And so,
oh wow,
yes, yeah. We knew that a lot of our potential customers were at Dreamforce, and we wanted to share the message of just break free from complexity was the message that was really clear. And we thought, what better way to do it? It was a relatively short-term project that we launched. So by the time we dove into it, a lot of the media was already purchased. But what we realized is that Salesforce couldn't purchase the sky. And so what we did is we had a drone show that went off right as people were leaving the amazing Foo Fighters concert. And we had break free from hunger with food, break free from traffic with cars, and break free from complexity was in the sky. And it was a pretty amazing experience to be a part of. And it then drove people, to a QR code in the sky that worked, which was pretty fun and a little bit nerve wracking as we were launching.
I bet. That's so cool. I mean, we could have done the whole podcast about this. Yep. There's so many things that are in this. One is, it sounds like it had to go pretty quick. So, you guys had to be quick and nimble and make some decisions. Such an attitude of a challenger brand. I've heard this phrase challenger brand now for I don't know, 7 or 8 years. And so many people want to be that and they aspire to be that, but they're not, frankly, brave enough to do it. And you guys did. You're like flying things over the sky at Dreamforce, one of your biggest competitions with Salesforce, and kind of pointing them towards you. You're kind of newsjacking the moment.
Yeah.
And, there's so many brands that would be like, oh, I don't know, are we going to upset them? Is this the right thing to do? And those are good questions for us to all have with our internal comms and external comms teams, but ultimately land on it and say, no, this is where we should be. And I even love the line, break free from complexity. So, such a cool brand moment that's coming to life as well that I love that you shared.
Well, and I think too, I think the magic in it, Eric, was everything you mentioned did exist, right? We were working with, all of our executives and kind of
Mm-hmm.
thinking about what are the consequences and thinking about the alternatives and so on. But ultimately we said we took a customer first approach, right? And I think that is like if you're
Right.
leaning
It's
into
where
the
they are.
customer, that's where they
Yeah.
are. This was a message we wanted to make sure that they heard. We wanted to make sure that
It's
they saw.
and it's where they are, and it's the kind of activation they would respect. Like
Right.
they would want to be at a company that was doing this campaign, right? And so I think that there is this narrative that's going through this whole topic. That starts right from the beginning, 20 minutes ago, about listening to your customer, knowing your customer, and then crafting content, social, and experiences. And it's probably something I don't talk about enough. I talk a lot about creating content that your customer wants. I talk a lot about building audience. I talk a lot about what does it take to build raving fans, but none of that happens without knowing who your customer is, what their wants and needs are, why are they interested, why is this going to entertain them. And so I love that that's a place that you're kind of grounding us today, because I think it can sometimes be lost in the world of creative and fun and ideas and publishing, which are all super important to where we're going. All right, so let me take a half step to the left a little bit and go to a kind of just one other part of brand that I think you guys are doing. I wrote a newsletter in December that was why have brands kind of lost the funny. But you guys have some personality, especially in these YouTube shorts that you've talked about. And there was one thing that you told me a while back about in talking about kind of the brand and kind of it's been in the history. You told me the story about a rock band. So I want to hear that story again to kind of tell us about kind of the DNA and how it comes to life within Zendesk.
Oh, this is such a great story. I take no credit for it. This happened well before my time. So the insight here was they recognized from an SEO perspective that people were looking for a Zendesk alternative, right? And that was a keyword that a lot of people were searching for, Zendesk alternative.
And for the average person that's out there listening, anytime you have a platform that you either like or don't like, people will Google, whatever, Zendesk alternative, Salesforce alternative. Give me another option for Monday. Give me another option for Sprinkler.
Yeah.
So this is something that y'all saw in the search queries.
We saw it in the search queries. And so the brilliant creative team and an SEO team said, hey, let's have a great time with this. And so they created the Zendesk alternative band. And so when you search for Zendesk alternative, it goes to a page and has the Zendesk alternative band. And it was amazing because it was kind of this scrappy, grungy band. And it was made up of all of our employees. And it was a really great moment. And it was just kind of a great way to show that, yes, we don't, again, take ourselves too seriously. There was, of course, if you landed, there was an opportunity for you to learn a lot more about Zendesk. And so it was strategic, right? And it aligned
Totally.
with overall business objectives. But ultimately, I think the big accolades were just how clever and creative it was.
And I love that this is a part of your brand that is continued today. But if you go, the website still exists. So I looked it up. ZendeskAlternative.com is the original Seattle alternative rock bands. Bad news, though, they do not have any shows listed under their tour sites. But what a great example. And what a great brand for you to be able to step into and be able to kind of continue on and kind of try to figure out exactly kind of the next level of what that brand's going to look like. I want to talk about reporting for just a moment. Really less reporting, more about analyzing content. Everybody, there's lots of reports that are out there. But one thing that I oftentimes tell people in my team or my old teams is I want to know how the channels are performing. Sure. I want to know how many clicks we're getting, how many people are driving to this location, how many people are downloading, subscribing, purchasing, of course. But there's business reporting, channel reporting, but then there's content reporting. And what I mean by that is content analysis, right? So it's looking at the content, understanding why is this short form TikTok working better than this? Why is this blog bringing more people into us? How can we learn from these things and then double down on these things? How do y'all think about content analysis at Zendesk or in any of your other stops?
Yeah. Well, I think for us, like as we're moving into, as you said, kind of more short form content, just kind of stopping there for a minute, we really do look at, what is the video view rate? What is the completion rate, right? Because that really
Mhm.
helps us understand, like, how far are people getting? It helps us understand how engaging the content is. It also helps us understand what we can, of course, do differently moving forward. And if there is a way for us to kind of rethink that. So those are some key elements in short form. But ultimately, as we take a step back, we're also looking at, like, where did they go next? And how did we, like,
That's
what is the
good.
time on page if we're talking about long form content? How many pages did our, kind of users view? And so we are also kind of equally looking at kind of CRO elements, right? To say, how can we make sure that we are serving up whatever that next best action should be, right? So
Mhm.
if they are reading a blog post or watching a video, what should be the next step? And ideally, it helps to serve the customer, as we talked about.
Yeah.
And of course, there's an ultimate business outcome as well.
Yeah. I love it. I love it because many people still today put an ad out there and pray. It still happens, right? I know that makes you squirmish, but it still happens. And to know that you're talking about things like next best action, and in the next best action, it's not just a purchase or an upsell,
Right.
it's an actual piece of content that you're marketing.
Yeah.
I think is such an important nugget. All right, a couple more quick ones here. This is one that I love. I've asked it of a few people, and it usually gets some pretty interesting things. Looking back over your years in social, what's something you've changed your mind on? Right, these channels have grown a lot. For me, it's probably paid social. I could talk about that for a long time, but this isn't the Eric podcast. This is the Kari podcast. What is something that you've changed your mind on when it comes to marketing over the years, especially as now you're in a broader seat?
Yeah. So I think it depends if the question is social or broader in general. Like, I think as we think about social, I think really marrying kind of that right balance of organic and paid. I think
Mm-hmm.
it is a powerful strategy. So how do you kind of launch with organic, see what's working, amplify through paid? I think there's a lot of good work that's been kind of evolved over the years, and that's so that you can be as efficient as possible. And then, of course, leveraging, you know, opportunities to hit your target audience and probably not being everywhere in every channel. I think that's the other piece of this. Yes, if
Oh,
we
you can't just throw that one in there so quickly. That's one people need to hear, right? Like that's everybody feels like the way to do marketing is to launch the new channel rather than, well, have you done that channel really well just yet?
Exactly, exactly. And I think the reality is that, there's probably a lot of opportunity for us in some of the other channels, but we are hyper focused on LinkedIn and YouTube right
Yep.
now, for this B2B audience. As we're thinking about this question broader, and I think we've had this conversation in the past, Eric, I think that,
Yeah.
I love the debate of to gate or not to gate. So for
Ooh.
me, it's a big one, right? I mean, especially as we think about the role of content for your brand.
Yeah.
If as we're looking at, I understand why we all gated content for a very long time.
Yep.
And it was because we felt like that was a great way to get a lead and then drive them deeper into the funnel.
Sure, sure.
But I think for many of us, what we're recognizing is that, again, those, because somebody wants to read your content, does not mean that they're ready for all of this sales outreach and to be kind of flowed into your outreach funnel. They're not, they might just want to read the content. And in
Mhm.
fact, what a great way to elevate your brand by sharing the content with them. So,
Yes.
I am a big fan of really having your content open, having your content free. Now, we are still in this evolution, even within our own
Yeah.
company right now. We still gate content. We gate
Sure.
high value content, but we
Yeah.
don't gate all content. We really look at those pieces. And we also try and give people enough information in advance so that before we gate, that they can really determine, like, if this is meaningful for them. But
Yeah.
I would love a world where content is flowing free, if you will.
I'm with you. It's value and relationship, right? And it's understanding what your goals are. If your goals are more transactional and commercial in nature only, which those have to be a part of the discussion,
Definitely.
versus long-term relationship, then you start gating everything, right? When you've got a leadership team that's more commerce focused, when you've got people that are more business focused, when you've got people that I feel like, look, at the end of the day, it's people that are running these teams and these divisions and these companies, right? When you have people that see a broader perspective around loyalty, around retention, then those people want to open things up and make them a little bit more fluid. I tend to kind of land in your area, but I'm all about engagement. So I'm with you. Now, I will say I do appreciate you giving me your email and downloading my content strategy for my website.
That's right. That's because I thought it would be valuable, and I shared it with my team. So thank you.
Oh, good. Well, good that it was valuable. All right, last kind of more open, and then we'll do the lightning round just to close it out. There's a ton of people in the B2B space that are doing this well. We mentioned HubSpot as being kind of a leader. I think Zendesk is definitely a leader. Salesforce, who are you looking at as kind of the bar, and not just the list, but what are the things that you're seeing people that are doing that you're like, we got to get there? I get that you guys are trying to knock out YouTube and you're trying to knock out LinkedIn, but what is the thing that you're like, man, these people are doing awesome here. They're setting the bar, and we're right on your tail. Zendesk is coming for you.
Yeah. So you mentioned kind of all of our core competitors, and they do a lot of things really, really well. And so, we're always keeping a close eye on them but in addition to that, we actually do look, kind of across B2B and B2C. Like we look at brands like MailChimp. Now, MailChimp is an Intuit company. So I, again, might have a little bias there, but we love the way, I think that we share a similar type of personality with MailChimp in the sense of just a really fun, engaging brand that is a B2B brand, but kind of feels like they're embracing kind of these B2C moments, right? With clever creative and really engaging content. We look at all of the, kind of the classic leaders in the group, right? The Apples and the Nikes of the world. McDonald's has done some really interesting things recently. I think they have really built a powerful content engine. But we also look at those brands that are kind of connecting to the emotional experience. And so 2 examples that come to mind just from recently, one was Etsy, right? If we think about kind of that B2B2C model, so really thinking about the joy that through the Etsy platform, the joy that it brings to customers, right? And if we think about that model works really well with Zendesk, right? Because we are kind of the B2B2C. And this really leans into Zendesk and our mission statement, where we power exceptional service for every person on the planet. So we're really interested in that B2B to kind of C emotional layer. I think Etsy's done that well. I think Amazon during the holidays did a phenomenal job, right? With connecting to the experience of purchasing things on Amazon and what was that human experience. So those are, some of the companies that we keep a close eye on.
That's good. Those are good. All right. Quick lightning round.
Okay.
We'll do this pretty fast and we'll let you get out of here. Favorite content book or podcast?
Building a Story Brand is the...
Building a Story Brand. Yeah. Super good. Favorite online tool that you or your team can't live without? Not Zendesk.
Not Zendesk. Okay. Zendesk aside, it's amazing. We do use Asana, and I would also say... This is not exactly a tool, but I would say Spotify, because Spotify fuels all of us during the day.
Focus.
Okay.
Let's go. If you could lead a content team for any other brand, dream gig, where and why? And don't worry, we're not trying to pull you away from Zendesk, but just kind of dream a little bit, maybe even from like a personal standpoint, things you're interested in.
Yeah, well, this one to me has always been, it's always been the same answer. It's National Geographic. It was kind of my dream when I was little. And I kind of ventured off into more of this B2B world, but National Geographic just stole my heart early.
They were one of the ones that really blew up Instagram early on. One of the brands that did amazing stuff there. They had like photographers, hundreds of them all over the country doing cool stuff. All right, last one here. Number one leadership characteristic you have to have when leading a content, marketing, a social media team.
Be brave. Be brave and be curious. Maybe I'll put those 2 together. Being brave, being willing to be able to kind of step into those spaces and really kind of create this new world of content and social and to elevate your brand. I think you need bravery, and I think you need to be really curious.
What a great close. So here's a couple things to just put a pin in. Listen to your audience, focus on the right channels, know your brand and how to lean in, and be brave and be curious. Kari, this was a pleasure. We have to do it again. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. It was a blast.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric.
That's another episode of Radical Content. We'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.